Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the SQL Server Series. In our last video, we learned how to retrieve data from a single table. We worked with the order by clause to sort rows in a result set, and we used the where clause to filter data. In this video, we are going to cover more examples on these clauses using the select statement. So just like any other programming language, you can use arithmetic expressions to perform a calculation on two or more columns in a base table, and you can use a string expression to combine two or more string values. So I'm just going to start by selecting all from invoices, and I'm going to run this query here, and I'm going to take a look at my table here. I've got my invoice ID, my vendor ID, my invoice number, and then I'm going to create some space here for myself here, and I'm going to remove my asterisks because I don't want every single column anymore. But now what I want is my invoice number. I'm going to use the comma separator to specify my next column that I want. I'm going to get the invoice total, and since I'm using an arithmetic expression here, I'm doing invoice total minus the payment total minus the credit total, and what that's going to do is take the invoice total down here, subtract it from the payment total, and subtract it from the credit total, and then I want to take the result set from these three calculated values, and I want to store it in a single column, not a real column that exists in the table, but a single column in our result set, and I want it to be named balance due. So now I'm going to run this, and you see here now for each invoice number we have a balance due column that has the calculation of the invoice total, the payment total, and the credit total. So after each column that you specify, you can use the as clause to specify the name of the column that you want in your result set. Let's say I wanted my invoice number column to be named differently. And I'll just come on over to it and I'll say as Darius Cool column. And then I'll execute it, and then you see it's called Darius Cool column. So you can pretty much rename these and get fun with them. Most programmers, what they do is they rename them to what it is that the user wants to see. So that way you don't see the data field name, but you see a more friendlier name that's more visual to the user. Now, let's say you wanted to rename your column to a name that contains a space in it. Well, you can wrap it in single quotes, and you can put your name in there, and SQL will recognize it, and you don't even need to put the as clause. You can wrap it just like this and execute, and you see invoice number here has a space in it now. Another way you can do it is instead of having single quotes, you can put brackets around it. This is an older technique for older SQL Server versions, but you also don't need the as clause. You can put brackets around it, and it puts a space in it. Of course, putting the as clause in this case won't make a difference, but the as clause is if you're writing code and you want other individuals to be able to easily understand the code that you're writing, then you're going to want to make sure you include the as clause when you're putting together your scripts. It just looks much neater. So now that you have calculated the balance due for each invoice, let's say you wanted to limit your result set to only show a certain number of invoice numbers in their balance due. Well, here in your select statement, you can do select space top, which would be getting the top of rows that exist. Do space, and then you specify the number of rows that you want to get. And in this case, we're going to put 50. That's all we want to see. I'm going to hit execute. And if I come down to the very bottom, you see all we have is those 50 rows. If we remove the top clause here and then execute our statement again, we come way down to the bottom, we have a max of 114. So omitting the top clause, will give you all of the data, and then when you put in a top clause, it'll limit the result sets. So what a lot of programmers do is when they're searching through tables, instead of getting back tens and thousands and 20,000s of data records back, they just do a select top 100 or a top 1000 from that table, just so that way they can peek into the table quickly and see if the information is what it is that they're looking for. Another thing we can do with the select statement is use string expressions to concatenate two columns and have them display as a single column in a result set. So I'm just going to start by selecting all from the vendors table, and then I'm going to run that query by hitting execute, and I want to concatenate my vendor contact last name with my vendor contact first name, so that way it appears in a separate column with the first name and the last name together. So create some spaces here for myself, and then I'm gonna say, hey, give me the vendor contact first name, and then to concatenate it, I'm gonna use the plus sign. I'm gonna use two single quotes. I'm gonna put a space in between them because I want to separate my first name from my last name, and I'm going to use another plus sign, and then I'm going to say give me the vendor contact last name, and I'm going to get rid of that asterisk sign because I don't want every other column in this query. I'm going to end it with a semicolon, and I'm going to highlight it, hit execute, and you see here now my first name and my last name has been joined together for my vendor contact names in one single column. It says no column name up here at the top because we didn't give it an alias name. We could simply give it an alias name if we wanted to and just call this vendor name, and then we could run the query, and now we have our vendor name here, and we've taken two columns and we've concatenated them together using string expressions. An expression can also include functions. We will talk more about functions in a later video, but let's take a look at a function that is used to calculate a current date. So I'm going to select the invoice number, the invoice date, and then I'm going to use the function getDate, and I'm going to name this column my current date, and that's going to come from the invoices table. Now you see over here on the right hand side we have a current date column, and it is displaying our current date using the getDate function, and it is the day right after New Year's, and it is 11/11. So this shows you a little bit on how to use functions in the select statement. Since I want to try and keep these videos short, I'm going to end this video, and in our next video we will continue going over examples on the clauses and expressions using the select statement. So thank you for watching. If you're interested in the next video, head over to database-tutorials.com. Please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and see you next time.